The true identities of the five elders, the true backstory of Imu-sama, the Holy Knight Father of Shanks, and more will be revealed in this epic chapter of One Piece, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Oda is going for a month-long break after this, so you know he always goes out with a bang before breaks, let alone one this long. Channel the Pirate King with it and smash that like button if you enjoy seeing these One Piece reviews and want to keep them coming. Make this the video you join the Nakama by subscribing and hitting that notification bell to turn all notifications on so you don't miss future One Piece videos and updates. And now without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. We get a pretty epic cover this week showing off Luffy, Kobe, but also Garp looking fierce. I love to see Luffy and Garp looking like they're fighting together on the same side like that, and hopefully we see that as time goes on and the truth of how corrupt the world government actually is comes to Garp's attention. I know he knows some of it, but I feel like when he knows all of it, he should side with Luffy. Like, it makes sense, so this could be foreshadowing. We also get a cool color spread, but are noticeably missing Zoro. We're told no rain, no rainbow, a pretty cool message when you think about it. This chapter is called The Five Elder Planets, and of course it's emphasizing the fact that, as mentioned, we are about to learn vital information about the Five Elders, which is all the more relevant now that one is coming to Egghead with Kizaru. We're told the curtains closed on the reverie before the news of King Cobra's murder came to light. We see Vivi being looked for, Cobra being looked for, and man, it's really not looking good for Alabasta. Then we're told a number of stowaways hold their breath as they attempt to escape on various royal vessels. We see Vivi with Wapol on the Aegis Kingdom's ship, and we see how Morgans agrees to pretend to look for a scoop from them so that these two have a chance to hop aboard his vessel. Morgans, for his part, thinks that a king becoming the subject of a manhunt is big news, which is of course what big news Morgans is interested in. He says he can't wait to hear all about it. Vivi, for her part, wants to know what Wapol saw, while Wapol just tells her to go back to her own ship, only to be told she can't because of CP0. They are no joke, and even if people try to help her, it won't be enough against such a threat. Vivi then wants to reach out to her dad, but Wapol is like anything but that and tells her to get lost already. This will definitely be a comedic duo moving forward. Even last chapter they were hilarious. We then see that Vivi and Sabo are being looked for. We see a cute Bonnie thinking she's hungry, she's a stowaway on the Tajin Kingdom's ship, and Sabo is laying bloody in the Lelucia Kingdom's ship. He thinks to himself if he can just make it there, he knows he can figure out something. Still, of course, he has no idea he will be framed for Cobra's death. He's just thinking about how Cobra entrusted him with the important information and told him he must live on. Then we're told these two key stories spread across the globe: the murder of King Cobra and the disappearance of Vivi. And again, I gotta say, not a good reverie for the Alabasta Kingdom. We then jump to the five elders discussing stuff as usual. They comment that Sabo seems to have a checkered fate and that he's constantly being surrounded by those who bear the letter D. They wanted to deal with Egghead now, but now it seems this Sabo stuff will have to take priority. Then Imu calls and they're like, "Yo, what's up, great Imu?" Imu is still chilling in the flower room as usual. Imu says the time has come to put Vegapunk's invention to the test. Use the Mother Flame. Which, by the way, crazy name. I like it, and again, to me, it kind of implies that Imu-sama will turn out to be female, but we'll see. They discuss how, yeah, they couldn't try it yet, so they couldn't ascertain its effectiveness. They even say depending on how well the experiment goes, Egghead may reconsider its response. As they wonder what to target, Imu says Lelucia Kingdom. And we know how it will be erased, but the assumption was that it was erased because Sabo was there and they helped Sabo, or at least the government thought Sabo was there. However, this was not actually the case at all, as we're about to learn. Here we see how Imu thinks. It's pointed out that a lot of people lived there, but Imu just says that is of no consequence. It's almost like Imu-sama is saying, why are you even telling me such irrelevant information? For Imu, that is no different than firing a shot into the sea. The point is to test for effectiveness. No one goes against Imu, as they say that the world moves at the will of the creator, which appears to be Imu here. One elder simply wonders why Lelucia, and Imu says its close proximity is the reason. We then get all the names and titles of the five elders. So they're introduced as the five elder planets: Defense Science Warrior God Saint J. Garcia Saturn, Environmental Warrior God Saint Marcus Mars, Justice Warrior God Topman Valkyrie, Finance Warrior God Ethan Baron V. Nusjuro, and Agriculture Warrior God Shepherd Jew Peter. So they're all described as warrior gods, which is hype, and as we know, they appear to have devil fruit powers as we saw last chapter too, so these guys are definitely a force to be reckoned with in their own right. I can't wait to see one actually go all out. Just as Imu-sama seems to be immortal as mentioned later in this chapter, these 5 might be as well. Otherwise, they do seem to be older than you'd expect warrior gods to be. Eventually, the elders justify Imu's decision about Lulusia, saying their citizens have shown sparks of rebellion recently, we may have to make an example of them. They also think about it like it's an atomic bomb, which I think is an important comparison as we'll see later. Anyways, they say if they could use this freely, they could instantly snuff out any protracted conflict, and there's definitely apt commentary here on governments. They first decide what place to target for their own benefit, and after the fact create a narrative that justifies their actions. Imu also makes it clear that the retrieval of Vivi is a priority, which isn't really surprising since we saw Imu holding that picture of Vivi before. Of course, that's going to come into play. Then fast forward to the Marines, and they're speaking of how the kingdom of Tajin and Aegis, in other words, the ships that Bonnie and Vivian Walpole escaped with, are both rebelling. Between the disbanding of the 7 warlords, we're told, and the uprisings in government-affiliated nations, the Navy has their hands full. However, their military power had already gone in a new direction. And then we see them deploying the Seraphim because Crocodile was spotted on Empty Bluffs Island. And by the way, that name is so hilarious, gotta say it. We notably see Seraphim versions of Doflamingo, Moria, and Crocodile. I think what they really need is to reveal their secret weapon though, the Buggy Seraphim, aka S-Clown. But seriously, it would be interesting to see how far they went because a Blackbeard Seraphim and Lost Seraphim would be pretty overpowered, and they were also warlords at some point. Then we jump back to Sabo's hype conversation with the revolutionaries, specifically with Dragon and Ivankov. You know, that conversation that's so insane that anyone who hears it could die. He says the second they docked Lulusia, the people arrested King Seki and Princess Komane. They were waiting to ambush the royals. Since Sabo was a stowaway, he was welcomed with open arms. That's when he saw the papers and found out he was framed for Cobra's murder. The people considered him a hero, and Sabo kept his mouth shut because he saw how that lie fanned the flames of rebellion within them. He ended up bringing many of those hopeful revolutionary recruits back with him. He didn't have an encryption snail, so he rerouted his call through Lulusia. He knew the government would intercept the signal, but doing it this way would make it seem like he's still in Lulusia, even if he was already in the sea. And it's revealed that the annihilation of Lulusia really did happen during that call. The people on board were hysterical since a lot of them still had family on the island. I'm sure that made them even more motivated as revolutionaries, seeing what the government is capable of doing to their loved ones. Dragon wonders how they did it. How did they cause so much damage? Sabo points out that it was an enormous shadow that appeared above the clouds. He says something pitch black was flying above and it wasn't a living thing or natural disaster. Ivankov then brings it back to Imu, saying one of the first 20 sovereigns 800 years ago was Saint Imu of House Narona. Then pointing to a book, Ivankov says, we know an ability granting eternal youth is said to exist, so this Imu person probably has the same thing and doesn't need to worry about death. Sabo asks if they think this Imu he saw was the same one from back then. Ivankov admits it could be a coincidence, but at the same time doubts that anyone else but a founder could command the 5 elder planets, the highest of world nobles. He says the dragons fancy themselves the descendants of the gods after all, and so that could be how they view Imu as a god, which goes with the fact that the elders recently referred to Imu as the creator. So a lot of the pieces of the puzzle seem to be coming together here. Ivankov then predicts that the weapon used was created by Vegapunk. Dragon insists that Vegapunk would never intentionally design a dedicated killing machine, and that's true of the Vegapunk we know. But I mentioned how Vegapunk looked like Einstein before, and Einstein's findings were used to create the atomic bomb without his consent. So that's probably what happened here too, if I had to bet on it. They briefly bring up the possibility of an ancient weapon, but Dragon thinks that they would have used it before if they had it. We then jump to present day, where a celestial dragon has been sentenced to death. But this information will never be reported to the world, we're told. Which makes sense, they want celestial dragons to always come off as untouchable. We see that in Merijoa, people are complaining that their food supply is gone. They have no bread, all they have is cake. This definitely reminds me of that one quote. said to be spoken by a great princess. Upon being told her peasants have no bread, she said, "Let them eat cake." It represents how detached from reality the privileged can be, and that's definitely how the celestial dragons are portrayed as well, so it's a fitting reference and a pretty funny one. Anyways, we are now getting to the craziest, most insane, most hype part of the chapter. We see a figure whose hair and beard make the shape of a crescent moon. Since Luffy, our protagonist, is represented as the sun god, associated with the sun, it's fitting that this enemy is associated with the moon. We're told that the judge for the celestial dragon was the former king of the land known as, wait for it, God Valley. Yes, where Roger and Garp fought Rox D. Zebek and a 1-year-old Shanks was found. But wait, it gets even better. We're told he currently serves as the supreme commander of God's Knights. His name is Saint Garling Figarland, and the Figarland family was associated with Shanks in the One Piece Red movie, heavily suggesting that this could very well be Shanks' father. The man he executed was Saint Don Quixote Miosgard for defending the fishmen. He says anyone who protects scum is lower than the scum they protect. The narrator hypes him up further by saying this is a man who can even judge the celestial dragons. So there you have it. One way or another, this dude is definitely related to Shanks, so let me know immediately your thoughts and predictions about it in the comments. And if you find Shanks as hype as me right now, then you don't want to miss my hour-long video about Shanks, explaining everything you need to know so far about this epic but mysterious character. Link on screen to that right now, and I'll see you there.